Raiders! It's Raiders Fan Radio, a podcast by Raiders fans for Raiders fans who are the only fans that matter. That's right, Murf and Sonny from the Dago Dungeon. You got it right here, live.
Touchdown! Kenny Stabler goes all the way.
We miss you, we love you, and we'll see you in the Hall of Fame.
When you have great coaches, then after you have great coaches, you get great players. You have a great organization, and you tell them one thing. Just win, baby. Well, I love this team. I think this team can win. I think this team can win.
There is nothing as great as listening to Halo music and Al Davis combined in the same soundbite. Welcome in to a very special episode of Raiders Fan Radio. This is the Dave Dalby episode, the For 1 Year Jim Otto episode, and the current Mr. Morrow episode. That's right, it is episode number 50 for Raiders Fan Radio. With me in studio, as always, is my co-host, Murf. Murf, we made it to 50.
We made it to 50, and what a nice 50 it is. We've had a great
nice
time in the 49 leading up to this, and 50's good. 50's a nice number. It's not. Well, look, I think at this point we've been podcasting, doing this show longer than we have any other show that we've done, and we've been podcasting for like 6 years. So that's kind of saying something.
They say if your podcast goes past 7 episodes, you've made it longer than anybody else. Or not longer than anybody else, but you've made it longer than most. So, this is episode number 50, the Dave Dalby episode, and we have so many people to thank. We're going to get to that in a minute, but first, let's hear from Uncle Mark, who's been with us for most of the journey, and he can tell you more information about our show.
Hey, boys and girls, this is Uncle Mosh. That's right. Somebody actually claims Sonny and Murf. These two. Check them out on their website, RaidersFanRadio.com. You can friend them on Facebook at Raiders Fan Radio, or you can like their fan page at Raiders Fan Radio Podcast. Hey, I don't tweet. I don't even know how to use a Twitter, but they do. You can tweet them at Raiders Fan Radio. Call them. Leave a voicemail if you want. Go old school. 909-345-3346. That's 909-345-3346. Hey, do this. Please subscribe and rate Raiders Fan Radio on iTunes. You can listen to the show on all podcast services like Stitcher, TuneIn, Podcast Addict, and many, many more. Okay, am I done? Did I say all the stuff I was supposed to say? All right, I'm out of here.
All right, as we mentioned earlier, this is episode number 50 for Raiders Fan Radio. It's been quite the journey, but rather than sit here and tell you all about that journey, we want to do what we feel has made this show successful in our eyes, and that is you, the listener. We originally called our show the Raiders Fancast as a way to incorporate fans and to really give a voice to the fans. Me and Murf are not beat writers. We're not aspiring writers. We're not analysts. We're not none of that. All we are is fans from the day we were born, because our dads made us. And, they made us, and they also made us become Raiders fans. but we've never tried to pretend we're anything other than fans. We'll have hot takes. We'll have cold takes. We'll have knee-jerk reactions, because you know what? That's what Raiders fans do. But in lieu of that, despite our own asinine statements from time to time, so many people have come on the show over the past year and done some awesome interviews. And so we made a list of everybody who's been on the show, and we want to go ahead and thank everybody who's come on the show. So real quickly, I'm going to go down the list, and this is in no particular order. We got Z, Aaron from 4Dub, Mario Tovar from RaiderRamble.com, Scott Winter, Pastor Armando, Violator, Rocky and Israel from the Space City Booster Club, Ted Wynn, Richard Cervera from the Las Vegas Raiders Booster Club, Jimmy Zibak from the Great Lakes Raiders Booster Club, whose shirt I'm wearing right now in honor of episode 50, Troy and May from the Northern Virginia Raiders Booster Club, Kenny and Arnina Murf from Hampton Roads Raiders Booster Club, Liz from DC Metro Raiders Booster Club, Chuck, a.k.a. Splatterhead McCann from New Jersey chapter of the Black Hole, Kevin the Raider Nerd, who's also the random guy on the freeway that we see leaving a game, from the Fandom Podcast Network, Johnny Fam, John Kingdon, you'll hear his interview later this episode, Jeff Haskins from DeadPirateSports.com, Raider Steve in Canada, Jose Hernandez, the only man to ever take a Raiders flag into space, and Jeff, the Titans fan, who not only is the only guy to be on the show who's not a Raiders fan, but might even be the best looking guest we've ever had on the show, Murf. However, we have been efforting to outdo Jeff and get one Victoria's Secret model who's a diehard Raiders fan, Josephine Scriver. We have been reaching out and talking to her agent and her casting person, whatever.
PR,
trying to get her on the show.
Personal relations.
We're in works. We're efforting to make that happen for you all. So if your name was listed, if your booster club was listed, thank you for the support. It's been awesome. Facebook has really catapulted this show to a really cool place. This last Sunday after the last game, we did our Raider retort. I think there was over 300 comments, 1,000 views from the first night. So just it's awesome, because otherwise it's just me and Murf talking on the phone, bitching at each other. But now we get to bitch at each other in front of you, and that just makes it a lot more fun, huh, Murf?
Well put. That's exactly right. And that was the whole concept of the show, right? Is that, you and I would get on the phone and we'd, be hooting and hollering about the Raiders, and we thought, it might be kind of fun to hoot and holler about the Raiders with all of you as well, so because with nowadays with podcasting and social media the way it is, it's really cool that we can all kind of come together as a community of fans and give out those hot takes, those affable takes, those, the Twitter GMs, the Facebook head coaches, all of us. We can all get together and celebrate this thing that is Raider Nation. And that's what is so cool. And everybody that you listed, plus all the people that listen to us week in, week out, that's what makes our show so fun to do. And we are so thankful to them. All the folks, some of the groups out there, I know that the RNFL Facebook group, they're celebrating a 1-year anniversary today. Congratulations to them and to Mike Biggs, who started that. That's the cool thing. That's what separates us and makes Raider Nation unique, is that it's our community of fans. There are plenty of fans of plenty of teams out there, but when it comes to Raider Nation, it's kind of a special thing. Now, there's a downside to that as well, and we'll probably get into that later in the show when you look at what people like, when you're screaming at the players and cursing them as they're coming out of the facility. That's not so much the good part.
But at least they're upgrading from flipping off a building to now flipping off the player.
That's true. At least we're not screaming at a building anymore. Now we're actually screaming at a person. Yeah. So, but anyways, so thank you to all of you. It's amazing. We are overwhelmed and we are humbled by your responses to, a couple of knuckleheads like us that got big mouths and a couple of microphones. So thank you again.
Yeah. And it's not only Raider Nation, it's Raider World. There are times when our podcast, and this isn't bragging, this is bragging about Raider fans. There's times our podcast is listened to in over 21 countries. I can't even name you 21 countries, but our podcast is listened to in 21 countries, which blows me away as I sit here in my garage in my house doing this podcast, that it reaches that wide. And the internet's amazing. Facebook, social media is amazing, but really it's Raider fans. It's you listening right now, telling your friend about it, listening in, because I do it. I don't listen to our show. I listen to everybody else's show. So I listen to Black Hole Banner, the Pillaging Podcast, Charlie Boots. Thank you to everybody who does podcasts and talks about, mutual interests and stuff. Because if I'm at work, hammering away on paperwork and stuff like that, I'm going to listen to the radio, man. I'm going to hear about Raiders and stuff like that. So it's been a fun ride. And again, RNFL is one of the groups. If you guys don't subscribe to Raider groups, you should check it out on Facebook. There's all sorts of Raider groups out there. But RNFL was started by a guy named Mike Biggs as a way to show service members outside of the country Raider games. And they tune in on Facebook. Now, probably shouldn't put that too out there. But it's a very cool thing what they're doing. And we appreciate that. And this is their 1-year anniversary. So congratulations on that. And so good stuff. Anyway, enough of that. We got a lot to talk about today. After the break, we're going to jump into the Sea of Fans mailbag. I think we have 5 voicemails coming at you. If you're not familiar with that, it's our weekly phone line. We can call it really any time, but we play it every week. It's 909-345-3346. That's 909-345-3346. Took me 50 episodes to memorize that number. But you can call in. You can leave your frustration, leave a comment, leave whatever. We'll play it on the show for you. After that, we have probably one of our, at least in my eyes, one of the interviews I was most excited to do. It's with John Kingdon. Now you ask, who is John Kingdon? John Kingdon worked for the Raiders for 28 years, from 1978 to 2012. He is one of the co-authors of the new book, Al Davis, Behind the Raiders Shield. John Kingdon came on and talked to us for what, Murf, 40 minutes?
Yeah, at least. Off on and off the air. Yeah, we had a great conversation. It was supposed to be a 15-minute interview. John Kingdon went off and told stories and just elaborated on the Jamarcus Russell issue, all sorts of fun stuff, all sorts of stuff about Al Davis, some that was in the book, some that wasn't in the book, and some he just elaborated on. And what a truly special interview, Murf. I had to put my fanboy on pause for a minute and try to act professional when talking to John, but I could gush about him all day, and we'll talk more about that after we play the interview there. After that, Raiders versus Ravens, our affable recap. On Sundays after the game, we give our non-affable recap, which is where we kind of let our emotions out a little bit. If you didn't check it out, it's on YouTube and our Facebook and our website. It's called the Raider Retort, and we let our emotions fly a little bit. But on tonight, it's more of an affable recap, looking at maybe the X's and O's and what happened. After that, we're going to jump into 3 reasons. And tonight, you'll get to hear Murf give you 3 reasons why the Chargers should be able to beat the Raiders, and I'll give you 3 reasons why the Raiders should be able to beat the Chargers. But based on the way the Raiders are playing, I think Murf got the easier gig for tonight. We'll get into that later. It's getting easier, that's for sure.
After that, Murf has a black hole of the internet where he spends hours and hours and hours scouring the internet and gives you facts that really nobody else cares about, but Murf has a platform to share them, and so he's kind of like our resident Cliff Clavin, if you will. Right, Murf?
Yeah, it's a little-known fact there, Sammy, that Carlos Santana released Deeper Dig Deeper in 1987 on the Blues for Salvador album.
There you go. All right, let's jump into the Sea of Fans mailbag.
There he is, fading, looking. He's under the gun. He's caught, he throws. It is. Oh, he caught
it. Sonny, this week as we dive into the Sea of Fans mailbag, we are going to start off with, we have 2 made men that called in to the show this week. And so first off, we're going to start off with our good friend Chuck Splatterhead McCann of the New Jersey chapter of the Black Hole.
Hey guys, Chuck McCann here. I guess we're all feeling a little bit of Monday depression today. It's disheartening, isn't it? This was supposed to be our year, and just nothing's working. And I don't know. I don't understand any of it. I don't understand why we didn't address our defensive problems in the off season. I don't understand why we changed the offensive scheme. It didn't seem like that was a correction that we really needed to make. I'm mind boggled by all of it. And then, with all the controversy now with Penn yesterday, it's just all just stuff that's just piling up. That's just, it feels like we've gone in a time machine and traveled back, 5-6 years. And, I hope that they can turn it around. I have a real strong feeling that we're going to see some people fired, and, we know what happens then. Then you're starting all over again. And, you never know if that's the solution. I mean, what are we doing? What's going on with Reggie Nelson and Sean Smith? I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on and on. Just keep sitting here banging our heads into the wall, asking what's happening. Anyway, I don't have much to say. I'm very, very disheartened by what's going on this season. But we've been here before. Hopefully, we're able to turn it around this season. And, this is when we all know who the true fans are too, right? Still rocking my Raiders gear, still standing up for the silver and black. And, hey, like I always say, go Raiders. And, we'll see what happens. But, yeah, I know how everybody's feeling, and, I'm feeling the same way. All right, guys, take care.
Thanks, Chuck, for your voicemail, and I know you're not alone. I know you have at least two people who feel the exact same way you do, and I imagine there's thousands of others who feel the exact same way. And I've been saying this for a couple weeks now, just to make sense of my own emotions. For me, what hurts the most is the expectations were that we're back, we've arrived, we're the new darlings of the NFL. We're gonna take down the Patriots. We're gonna beat the Chiefs. We're the new team. Vegas is betting the most on the Raiders. And then this, the disparity between those two is huge. Whereas if it was like, hey, we were 12-4 last year, great, man, maybe this year we'll win a couple playoff games or something like that. Then maybe it would still sting, but not as much. And so the drop off is what's hurt me, I think, the most. And also, Chuck, you brought up a couple good points. What do they do if heads need to start rolling? And when is it too early to start saying that? We don't want to do a knee-jerk reaction. People are saying now it's too early for a knee-jerk reaction, but clearly things aren't happening, right? How do we fall off in regards to turnovers, right? We're not turning over the ball. We're not getting turnovers anymore. We're not creating turnovers anymore. Our offense is lackluster as all get out. Todd Downing's supposed to be this rock star. So when is it time to call people out, who are coaching and stuff? When is the appropriate time? And if an action does need to happen, should it happen now? Should we throw away the season and have it at the end of the season? When's the appropriate time? So it's like, we'll get into it in a little bit, but I think this Charger game, this is a must-win game for the Raiders. We'll get into more of that down the road or later on in the show.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's absolutely a must-win game. And on to what Chuck had to say there, a few things. You brought up little Sonny Stradamus there. You brought up well before the season started about the PR issues that the Raiders were facing, and that hadn't gotten any lighter. Like, it's still – the PR issues are there. It's gotten worse, if anything, right? Yeah, and so, like, you get the Donald Penn's contract underway and then wrapped up, and then all of a sudden you got this other thing with him getting out of the car and yelling at the fan, we'll get into that probably more later. But it just, there's a lot of odd things, unhealthy organizational things going on with the Raiders right now that I thought we were past. He brought up no change on defense. That's something that I've harped on as well, Chuck. I'm with you. I understand. It's like we got the same, and I know we got a lot of injuries going on, but we got essentially the same unit working and the same, the same guy calling the defense, and like this was the weak spot we were supposed to handle, and we really hadn't done a lot on it. So I feel like we were kind of duped, and this is something that we talked about on the Raider Retort this week. Is that I feel like we were sold a bill of goods. Like this team had all these expectations and all this hype, and they haven't done anything. They haven't really changed, at least not much. Offensively, kind of the same thing. We were supposed to have the same offense plus, like it was going to be the Musgrave offense with the Todd Downing impact. And, we really haven't seen that. He'd mentioned about how it feels like it did a few years ago. I think that's ultimately what's got us so frustrated is it's like, oh, great, we suck again. Like now we're back to this.
Like, here we go again.
Here we go again. I thought we were past all that. And then the last thing, he said something about being a true fan, and while we're not the biggest fan of the terms true fans or real fans, I think what his point though is important, is that it's this is where if somebody was on the bandwagon, you'll know it now. You know what I mean? Because now we're fighting for our life for a wild card and fighting to not be in the cellar of the AFC West. So if anybody was a Fairweather fan, then they're going to get sussed out real quick. And I think that's kind of what his point was.
In light of that, though, too, the other thing we should throw out there, too, is when people say, oh, you're critical of the team. Oh, you're not a real fan if you're critical of the team. Like no, dummy. Like, you can be critical of the team and still be a fan. Like, I seen somebody say, if you're going to criticize this team, jump off the bandwagon. Like, I was never on the bandwagon. I'm a fan for life. Like, you got to, that's the ridiculous concept that you can't be critical of the team and not still be, in love with them or, be a fanatic of the team and stuff like that. Like, I think you have to be able to be critical of the team.
I think, it's important to be, because that's the only way that, as a fan, that you're going to try to, you got to be honest. You can't be a blind loyalist. And I think that it's funny, like when we do our social media stuff and, as you mentioned on our Raider Retort this last week, we had 1,000 people join us in the moment. And I think, at this point it's had like 1,700. I don't say that in a way to draw attention to what we did. But I do want to draw attention to the fact that that's a big sample size of Raider Nation. And out of all those people that were on our feed and commenting and all that, most everybody was kind of on the same page as we were as far as being critical. But there are a few outliers that are like, you guys aren't, this, or you guys aren't that, and you shouldn't say this and you shouldn't say that. And I don't think that's being a fan. I mean, it's not up to me to determine what your fandom is. And, that's why we're not, fans of the words like true fan or real fan or whatever, because fandom is only defined by your passion for whatever it is that you're into, so you're Sonny, your passion for the Oakland Raiders that was developed in you when you were a kid, like you said, you're never on the bandwagon. That's never going to go away. You can be objective and look at the team and say, I don't like this about them, I don't like that about them. It doesn't mean that you don't love them. It doesn't mean that you're not going to support them. It doesn't mean that we're not going to wear our gear. It doesn't mean that anything is going to change as far as our support or love for the team. But I think that it's okay to just say, look, this sucks right now. Because if you don't, then you're not being honest. Because it does suck. Because you can't look us in the eye and tell us that right now things aren't crap for the Raiders. They just are. So accept it, and then let's talk about the ways they're going to get better. So let's not dwell on the problem. Let's focus on the solution, and let's not pretend that the problem doesn't exist, because that doesn't do anything. Anyways, next up, here we go. Last week, we had Dakota Raider call into the show, and unfortunately he got cut off. He must have hit a button or something and cut himself off. Well, guess what, Sonny? Dakota Raider is back, and we're glad to have him and welcome him to his first entry into the Sea of Fans.
Yeah.
Sonny, Murf, this is the Dakota Raider. Sorry we got cut off last time. I'm sure it was an epic rant, but no one will be able to hear it. Thanks for still giving me the point towards being a made man. I'm sure I forgot to pay my Verizon bill or something. Anyways, just mainly, I guess in that message, wanted to give props to Jose Hernandez. The dude smuggled a Raider Nation flag on a spaceship. Raiders fan would do that. So I guess one more thing, if I'm even still recording, I don't think anybody has given enough props to our defense. In the Redskins game, they're basically the only reason we weren't shut out, like the Mark Sanchez hot dog game. 38-0, I think that was. And that Redskins game felt even worse than that. And also, they were the only reason we had a chance
to win the game against Denver within the last 2 minutes. So I think they need props for that because that's what a defense is supposed to do, give the offense a chance to score. So, hey, I love you guys. Always listening. Here's 2 points for me. I'll talk to you later. Bye.
Thanks, Dakota. Thanks for paying that Verizon bill so you could finish your take there. Murf, he brings up a point. If you have to look at the 2 units, the defense has played better. And I don't really think that's an arguable take. The defense has played better, at least in the last 2 games. They kept us in the game. The offense couldn't score. We all and maybe it's down to maybe expectations again. We expected our offense to put up 35, 40, 30 points a game, something like that. We expected the defense to be mediocre, and they are. Like, they're not. I wouldn't say they're great or they're outstanding or they're lighting up the stats. I mean, have you heard Bruce Irvin's name all year, right? So it's not like the defense is playing lights out. And to be quite frank, they're decimated with injuries. If you look at it, right, our who we got? 2 quarterbacks on the roster now, 3 quarterbacks. It's ridiculous. So the defense has played up to where we expected them to play. It's the offense that's kind of been like, hello, where you at? What's going on, right? And so I think he has a point there. I don't want to be too hard against the defense. However, though, we give up 30 points against the Ravens. But if we're running the football, it's establishing drives, sustaining drives, all that stuff, maybe the Ravens don't put up 30 points on us. Cook completes the catch, goes down to the ground, doesn't fumble that ball. We're not down 14-0 in the first 5 minutes of the game. So, yes, we gave up 30 to the Ravens, but would we have given up 30 if the offense was playing better? So I got to go with Dakota on that one for sure.
Yeah, and I was, he didn't know what was going to happen, obviously, against the Ravens. So prior to that game, he was absolutely dead on. That was the pleasant surprise. And in fact, when you listen to the 3 reasons that I gave going into the Ravens game, one of them was Ken Norton Jr. And I said I was going to ride or die with Ken Norton Jr. and his defense against Baltimore. Well, guess what? You know what I mean? Like, man, I died. I mean, it was bad.
Don't you think if our offense plays better, our defense plays better or doesn't give up 30?
Well, I don't know. When you give up a 52-yard bomb on the first play of the game, I mean, that was pretty freaking ugly, man. And that was defense. And I think that, and we'll get into the specifics of that game here in a minute. But yeah, I think that Dakota was on a very good point, and I was with him. Like we were all, unfortunately, let down dramatically after their play against Baltimore. But we'll talk about that in a minute. Let's go on to our next caller here. We're going to go to, as you'll hear him note, the first of our made men, Johnny in San Diego.
What's up, fellas? Johnny in SD, checking in once again. Made man number 1. Man, what can we say? If Jack is worth anything, and I know he's not a scheme guy, he's a leader of men, and I truly believe that he has to turn this season around now. I mean, this has to be the moment where he turns it around. I heard a couple comments from players just, talking about what's going on with the team. I believe Jalen Richard made a comment, how long are we going to get our ass kicked? How long are we going to take this? And that's Jalen Richard, undrafted rookie. That guy's been through so much adversity last year, and he's like the vocal guy. He's the vocal guy. We need our main guys, our leaders, our silent leaders, to be vocal leaders. We need Mac, we need Carr to get in front of the team and challenge everybody with the play on the field. It's got to change. I'm staying positive because I know Jack Del Rio is like I said, he's a leader. He may not have all the smarts, but he'll look you in the eye, and I believe he'll get that point across. Just want to comment quickly on that fake ass Raider fan, supposedly, and I'm doing air quotes, that challenged Donald Penn. Hey, Raider Nation, police our own. Don't let that guy even challenge one of our players. That's total BS. Total BS. If I was there, I would have, well, I'm not going to say, but man, that got me so mad because we're Raider Nation, man. We're one love, one nation, all together. All right, boys, let's stay positive, kick the Chargers' ass, and let's move forward. Raider Nation, peace.
Thank you, Johnny and SD, our first made man. Maybe we should title the episode, How Long? Not Howie Long, How Long, right? I mean, that's the epitome. I think Jalen Richard's comments echo what all Raider Nation is asking is, how long? How long until something's fixed? How long until we address the corner to DB issue? How long until we address defensive line push? How long until we address the inside linebacker? How long until we address Carr maybe not feeling as eager to sling it or as comfortable slinging it? How long till we address Cooper's situation? How long till we address, Marshawn Lynch maybe not performing as well as we had liked? Right? I mean, it's a pretty good insight. It's a real short question, but it's a lot of questions that it leads into. How long do we as fans still hold out hope? I mean, really, Murf, at this point, we're 2-3. If we don't beat the Chargers, we're 2-4, bottom of the AFC West. You think we're making playoffs, right? Like, come on, how long? That's it. There's no other better way to sum up what the first 5 games of the season has been, other than to scratch your head and go, how long, man? Come on.
Yeah, I agree. And I do like the fire. I like hearing Jalen Richard step up because, frankly, that's what we need as a team. And again, something else we talked a lot on the retort about. I'm going to try not to reference that show every time I talk. But it is something that we brought up is that where's the fire? Where's the leadership on the team? And as much as we give Derek Carr acclaims for being the leader of our team or Rodney Hudson or Khalil Mack, where's the fire? Even Marshawn, as much as he's a leader and he's got the cred, right? He's got the ring. He's got, a long tenured history of production in the league. So he commands a certain amount of respect, but he's not like a fiery vocal leader. Like, where's our leaders? We need to have someone in this locker room step up and be a leader. Look, no one's going to come out and be Charles Woodson tomorrow, but we need somebody to start to emerge as the next great leader of our football team. It's got to happen. It's every successful championship team has it. So who's it going to be? Well, Jalen Richard took a step in the right direction by saying this, and I commend him for doing that. It takes a lot of guts to do that. As Johnny mentioned, he's an undrafted free agent. He's not some, first round pick coming in and big contract and nothing. This is a guy that, is really kind of, aside from us Raider fans, he's not like a well-known guy in the league. So I think that it's pretty cool that he was willing to do that. And I hope that the Raiders respond. At least, again, let's start moving it in that direction. Let's start getting some fire to this football team and not take this stuff in stride. That's one of the things also that really is disappointing to me about Del Rio is that everything has been in stride so far. Now, look, I get it. Don't get too high. Don't get too low. Stay the course. All that. I get it. We're on to Cincinnati, right? I get all that. But at the same time, at some point, you do have to really dig in a little bit. And as Johnny mentioned, Del Rio is a leader of men. He's not a great X's and O's coach. He's not a scheme guy. That's not what he does best. What he does best is that he leads people. He leads these young men and leads this team. Well, we got to see some fire out of Coach, man. We got to see it especially if we're not going to see it come out of the locker room. Then he's got to be the one, that he's got to be the fiery guy. Look at, I'll give you the Steelers, for instance. Who's the fiery leader of the Pittsburgh Steelers? It's freaking Mike Tomlin.
Mike Tomlin, man.
Right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because they don't have any fiery vocal leaders anymore. Those guys have kind of moved on, or James Harrison's in the twilight of his career, whatever. But so it's Mike Tomlin's the guy. Well, that's what we need Jack to be for us now. We've got somebody get out there and rile them up. So I think that it's very good points. He mentioned Mac. stepping up. I don't know if Mac's the vocal guy to do that, but I think he's one of those guys that's going to lead quietly and lead with his play and lead with his work ethic, and that's fine. There's definitely a value in having a leader like that as well, but we got to get somebody to step up. And the last thing that he mentioned was this idiot fan. It's so been widely covered now that I'm not going to get into the specifics of it, but the fan that confronted Donald Penn as Donald Penn was leaving the facility. I think Johnny makes a really great point. Raider Nation, police your own. And not only should Raider fans that were also around there, I think should have done something to intervene to try to mitigate what happened, but also security, and also on the Raiders, why does the fan have that kind of access to a player anyways? If you're to the point where, look, I know you want to give them proximity so they can wave or maybe get an autograph. I don't think anybody's opposed to that. But if you have a guy that's starting to spew obscenities and starting to there's you look in the video of this thing, there's kids right there. Why doesn't somebody escort this guy the heck away from there way before he ever gets a chance to start encountering Donald Penn face to face? It was such a dang cluster F, Sonny. That thing from top to bottom, and it's not just that idiot who is obviously the biggest, protagonist in all this thing, but Donald Penn should have never got out. He lied about the guy maybe throwing something in his car, and then the Raiders and the organization and the security in charge of it, they're guilty of it as well. So I'm with you on this, Johnny. Police your own. Let's not let stuff like this happen. We already get a bad enough rap as it is as Raider fans. We don't need idiots like this out representing what we are as Raider Nation. It's just ridiculous. You got anything on that?
I don't want to give that guy any more pub than he's already gotten.
Sounds good. Let's move on to Ron from Ohio.
Hey, not Johnny in San Diego, the fan. Who
No.
Yeah. Johnny's cool.
All right, let's move on to Ron from Ohio.
Hey guys, Ron from Alliance, Ohio here. Wanted to wish you a happy 50th. The 50th anniversary is your gold anniversary, so I wanted to give you some gold nuggets on why this team is in good shape. I think our defense is good. Nobody said it, but I think our defense is good. A lot of the times we're playing with guys on the field that were either there last year in that terrible defense or in some cases a worse setup, and we're doing okay. I think Pagano's got us in good shape. And we got Obi coming back, and hopefully Connolly's going to get in there healthy soon. Second thing is King and Patterson are really ramping up the special teams. I believe in my head, King on his punts has had two people muff for fumbles that we recovered and another one against Denver that they didn't. And every time Patterson is able to get a return, he seems to have a little bit more spark than we've had in a long time. The other thing is our schedule. Some of the games that are coming up that we were looking at, maybe can we win those, the Patriots and the Cowboys, don't look like they're going to be as tough a challenge as maybe we thought at the beginning of the season. So that gives us a little bit of breathing room. And the last thing is health. We're missing Conley, we're missing Obi, we're missing Carr, we're missing Crabtree, but all those guys have injuries that are short-term, at least as it appears right now. So hopefully when it comes late in the season, we're doing okay. That's my take on it. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate the show. But I'm not calling.
What did he say was the last
I don't know. I couldn't quite catch that last part there. I think he hung up on himself or something. But that was Ron, Alliance, Ohio. Real quick, before you give your feedback on that, I want to play one more thing for you, okay? Because Ron calls back, and he says that, and first off, thank you, Ron, for giving us the congratulations on the 50th episode.
Yeah,
and because it's
cool.
50 and gold, he says that he's going to give us some golden nuggets, right? Well, Ron called back after the game.
Hey, guys. Ron from Alliance, Ohio, calling you back. Apparently those nuggets I called you with weren't gold. They were nuggets of something else. So I'd like to apologize. I think we're in trouble. Anyway, I hate the Chiefs. Let's hope they lose tonight. Have a good one, guys.
Shut up. That was awesome.
Isn't that great?
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Ron and Alliance, Ohio. We'll give you two. You're on 2. One more call, you're made. That was pretty cool. Appreciate the kind words there, Ron. I still think the defense has played okay. I still think it. You know, think about a blowout game, right? When you're down 14-0, 5 minutes in the first quarter, you're gonna do things on offense you normally wouldn't do. So when you have a backup quarterback and you're gonna do things on offense you normally wouldn't do, that just makes it that much worse. So that's why the defense gave up 30. But I don't think it was solely on the defense. Again, the Bronco game, the defense kept us in that game. The Redskins game, who the heck knows, right? Titans game, we're okay. Jets game, we're okay. So I don't know, man. I'm with Ron. I think the defense is still okay, despite what happened against the Ravens game. I still hold out hope.
You're a brave, you're a brave soul to do it. I mean, I'm with you. I mean, you got to have hope. What else? If we don't, then what else do we have? And, you know, it was nice to at least see Jack call out Sean Smith this week. You know, some of the headlines were, you know, oh, he's, you know, Jack Del Rio slammed Sean Smith. He didn't rip him. He didn't slam him. But he did draw attention to him, which for Jack is a lot. You know what I mean? And he basically just said, you know, I thought we were better than that. I thought we were smarter than that. So, you know, it is, you know, the defense certainly has potential, but as last week, it just kind of went the other way. But as far as their larger body of work so far this season, yes, it has been better than I think we expected, especially considering all of the injuries that have happened to the team. And, you know, so we'll see. We'll see. But that wraps up our Sea of Fans mailbag for this week. So thank you all again. As Sonny mentioned earlier, if you want to call in and have your voice heard, it's 909-345-3346. You can call it 24 hours a day. Leave us a voicemail, and we will play it and talk about you on the show.
DeadPiratesSports.com. Raider gear for our Raider Nation family. Huge selection of affordable, authentic Raider items and custom gear. Coolers, baby items. That's right, train them early, train them right. Baby items. Barbecue accessories. Who don't like barbecue? You know who don't like barbecue? 49er fans don't like barbecue because you can't barbecue alfalfa sprouts. Books, caftans. And as soon as we figure out what you do with the caftan, we'll let you know. Candles, flags, glasses, earrings, floor mats, hats, jerseys, kimonos, ponchos, helmets, cups, pendants, pet clothes, mugs, socks. Raiders socks. I got Raiders socks. Get you some Raiders socks. Temporary tattoos, tote bags, wall clocks, and towels. That's right, towels. You know why? Because we got an inbred cousin. I don't know if he's really in the family or not, but he's a Bronco fan, and he can dry his little red-headed tears. So check out DeadPiratesSports.com. Let them know you heard about him on Raiders Fan Radio and find all the Raider gear you could possibly want. That's DeadPiratesSports.com. Raider gear for our Raider Nation family. By Raiders fans, for Raiders fans, the only fans that matter.
All right, Raider Nation, as we talked about earlier, this last week, we were so very fortunate and blessed to sit and talk with John Kingdon, one of the co-authors of the book Al Davis, Behind the Raiders' Shield. John spent 28 years with the Raiders, plethora of stories and insight about how the Raiders organization operates, from the players in the field to the executive offices and stuff like that. So, great interview. It's kind of long. It's about 40 minutes, but I promise you it's going to feel like you're talking to your grandpa who happened to work for the Raiders. It's just phenomenal. It's really, really cool. So sit back, grab something to drink, and check out our interview with John Kingdon. All right, Raider Nation, like we had previously stated, we want to welcome into the show John Kingdon, who spent 33 years with the Oakland Raiders as a director of college scouting. He started in 1978, worked through the 2012 season. He's the co-author of the recent book with Bruce Kebrick and Steve Corcoran, Al Davis, Behind the Raiders' Shield.
please welcome in John Kingdon. John, how you doing today?
Doing great. A real pleasure to be with you guys. Just one slight correction. I worked under Ron Wolf up until 1993, the great Ron Wolf, who's in the Hall of Fame. So he was certainly in charge up until 93. But still, it was a great honor to work with Ron. So it was from 93 up through the 2012 draft that I was director of scouting.
All right. Appreciate you clarifying. And again, John, we thank you so much for coming on the show. One of the first questions, John, that we always ask a guest on our show is how did your Raider fandom start? But I think with you, John, we want to ask, how did your relationship with the Oakland Raiders start?
Well, actually, I grew up not liking the Raiders because I was from New York and I grew up as a big Jet fan. But I'd gotten my degree in English. So I wasn't sure what to do. And just an obscure little thought. I worked as a bartender in Queens, New York, and the boss of that restaurant was a man named Steve Rubel, who went on to open Studio 54. So it's kind of two unique bosses I had in my life, the Studio 54 boss and Al Davis. But anyway, I got a master's in it's obscure. And the only person that could top me was a man named Irv Kays, who was a PR director for us. And he'd been the PR director for the Yankees, so he worked for George Steinbrenner and Al Davis, both who were born on July 4th. But anyway, to get to them, I got a master's in sports management and needed an internship and sent out some resumes, and somebody had just gotten fired by the Raiders, and got in a very entry level, bottom level position, intern, picking up players, dropping off schedules, things like that. And football was the teams were a lot different back then. You might have had 30 people in the whole organization besides the players. Now there are literally hundreds and hundreds. And so I just kind of kept pushing my way into personnel, and they were very happy to have anyone just to, start doing things for them. And, just started looking at schools and helping out and anywhere I could. And then, things opened up and I got more and more into scouting.
Was it hard to go to work for a team that you kind of grew up not liking?
Not a bit. It was very simple to, it's like, I'll give you an example. Bill Romanowski might have been the most disliked player at one point by the Raider fans. Real tough guy, clean, but really tough, and would, beat the Raiders a lot. We signed him as a free agent. He's became the most popular player on the team. He does the pre-game shows and post-game shows, and so, I mean, you're sort of rooting for the uniform more than you are the player. So, no, it wasn't hard at all to make that adjustment. And when we played the Jets or the Giants, believe me, I pulled as hard for the Raiders as I could.
So did working for the Raiders make you a fan of the Raiders, or did you look at it more of that was just your job?
Well, both. The more successful the team is, the better working environment is, the more bonus money you're going to get, things like that. So it was, wherever you're working, I'm rooting like hell. And, it's sometimes, in scouting, maybe the biggest contradiction is if the team drafts a player that you don't like. And, you're sort of mixed towards, I want to be right as a scout, but I want him to do well as a player. So I basically rationalized it by saying no matter how much I root or for the guy or against the guy, it's not going to affect his performance either way. So anything Raider-wise, I was certainly rooting for.
John, in your book, you talked about Al as being such a consistent figure, never wavering from his convictions. But how did the team change around him in the decades that you were associated with the Raiders?
Well, yeah, it's a very good question as to, why we were doing well and why we didn't do well. And my thought, a couple of things changed. First of all, when Al got in to the league, back in the 60s, starting with the Chargers and the AFL itself, I think they were ahead of the NFL. This is the AFL. They were ahead of the NFL in a lot of ways, particularly scouting the predominantly black colleges. The NFL was behind that way. In the AFL, you got the Willie Laniers and the Buck Buchanans and the Willie Browns. And I think that was one way they were ahead. Now I think, again, scouting was ahead that way. And then number two, Al was a little bit more generous with his players than everybody else. And back then the money wasn't a lot. So if you gave a guy an extra $5,000, the word got out, and he loved the players and really treated them well. What really changed, the system changed. The owners became billionaires, and Al, couldn't match them that way. We were sort of like Cunningham Hardware going up against Home Depot, facilities like that. And so we weren't really a cash-rich organization. But I think the thing that really, the main problem with Al was his inability to stay with coaches. And why that was, I never quite understood, because he had John Madden for 10 years, wins a Super Bowl, goes to the Hall of Fame. Tom Flory's there 9 years, wins 2 Super Bowls, and should be in the Hall of Fame. But from that point, he goes from Shanahan to Shell to Mike White to Joe Bugle. None of them staying very long. And then we hit on John Gruden. And John was great. I mean, he turned everything around. He was everything I wanted. And for whatever reason, after 4 years, he trades him. And suddenly we go then from John to Bill Callahan, which we go to the Super Bowl as a carryover from John. And then from there to Norv Turner, from Norv Turner back to Shell, from Shell to Kiffin to Cable. And you just can't. And John Gruden said to me when he first got to the Raiders, he says, I had trouble getting coaches and players to come here because the constant turnover, coaches don't want to go there, players don't want to go over there because you're constantly moving. The players are getting new systems, and the coaches, if the coach gets fired, then you've got to move. And they got family and kids going to school. So I think you put all that together. I guess that was a longer answer than I intended, but that's pretty much how things changed.
No, we appreciate the answer. So what do you think was the motivation behind that in Al? Was it an ego thing, a relationship thing? What's the reason we shifted so much coaches back then?
Well, I think, we have a chapter, I don't know if you got up to, it's called Saving Face. And I think if you look back, Al had problems with 3 individuals that he ended up getting rid of. One was Kenny Stabler, one was Marcus Allen, and John Gruden. 3 great people and players in the organization that really contributed to success. And they had become the face of the team at that point when they were there. And I honestly never discussed it with Al, but I really think, talking with Bruce Kebrick and Steve as well, that it just seemed that when someone was becoming the face of the team, he made the change, and it was for the worse. So I think it was I guess maybe ego is not quite the word for it, but maybe personality kind of thing, and that pretty much was a problem. And what was successful early just didn't work later. This constant change and turnover was a real negative. You look at the Steelers. Well, they got 3 coaches in 30 years or whatever it is. Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher, and Mike Tomlin. That's great stability. New England has 1 coach, going on and on. So I think there's a true object lesson in our success and our lack of success.
So was it truly no one is bigger than the Raiders? And once someone maybe started to become bigger than the Raiders, that's when it became an issue with Al?
I really do. And maybe not so much bigger than the Raiders, but, bigger than Al. Again, becoming the face of the team. But, I think you pretty much summed it up right in the head because, they were great players, and Al didn't have problems with them. Gene Upshaw, he loved Gene, and Art Shell was a very fine player, and Teddy Ham. You go on and on with the players. But I'll give you another story that maybe I'm sorry we didn't get it in the book, but Tim Brown. Again, it's become somewhat the face and the voice of the team, but he was so good that and there was no problems, and they got along well enough. But we were in a game in Green Bay. And the game was basically irrelevant because we had to beat Denver the next week to get in the playoffs. But it was competitive to the fourth quarter, and then Vince Evans came in. And it was one of those cold, wet, snowy days in Green Bay. And Vince comes in the fourth quarter, and he must complete like 6 or 7 balls to Tim Brown. So in the locker room, Al, says, "Geez, Vince, how come you're only throwing it to Tim?" And Vince looked at Al and said, "Mr. Davis, he's the only one that wanted to get open," which I thought was a really great reflection of him. He was such a competitive guy. He wasn't out there to pad his stats. He just never quit playing. But I think that, he wanted the ball to go to James Jett or Jerry Porter, kind of spread it around more like that.
John, several minutes ago you mentioned he was ahead in recruiting out of the black colleges and paying more. I wanted to kind of go back to that real quick before I kick the Murf. It's well documented. We drafted Eldridge Dickey in 1968 in the first round. He was the first to hire a Latino head coach, and Tom Flores, first to hire an African-American head coach in Art Shell, first to hire, Amy Trask, first woman kind of, professional sports executive. What drove Al's desire to kind of do that? Was it maybe so he could be the trendsetter, or did he really have a passion for those maybe underserved population groups?
Yeah, no, I think he was very, very much an egalitarian, and I think he took great, great pride in like saying, being the first. And I think part of it, he grew up in Brooklyn and, saw the Dodgers, and I think he very much admired Branch Rickey and what he did with Jackie Robinson. So I think it wasn't just, gee, look at me, I'm such a nice guy. And I think he was a genuinely sincere person concerned with people in that regard. I think, he was always full of expressions, commitment, excellence, this and that. But I always liked the best one I thought he had was, you don't treat people the way you want to be treated. You treat people the way they want to be treated. And he was very conscious that way of, and I think the players very much appreciated it. And he gave them a lot of space to speak and to be characters. And as long as they played well, it was never an issue.
John, this is Murf. Thanks again for joining us here on Raiders Fan Radio. All those, amazing things that Al did and all of those firsts that Al did as an owner of the team really established him with the whole, the Maverick persona and the the leader of not only the Raiders and Raider Nation, but as a leader in the sport and moving the sport forward and all of those wonderful things that he did. I think often we look at, or at least I can only speak for myself as a fan, those things, regardless of anything else negatively that happened in his career or lack of success or results or whatever, will never overshadow those amazing accomplishments. So I really want to set that up, that no matter what, I think that we have a reverence for Al Davis that is well earned, and for those particular reasons. Now that said, I think it's also fair as a fan of just the team and those results, a lot of the things that he did seem to kind of work contradictory to one another. Just, the idea of just win, baby, and the fire that burns brightest in the Raiders organization is the will to win, was also fighting against his desire to be right and his desire to get the credit and never receive the blame. How do you think that when we look back on Al's career with the Raiders, how do we look at that? I mean, again, not taking any of those off the field things that he did that were amazing. The on the field performance, though, aside from maybe some of those John Gruden years that you referenced, how can we fairly judge Al's career as an NFL owner?
Well, I guess you do it in sections. He came in the beginning, and again right up through Tom. He was a very strong-willed man. And I think maybe there was a problem adjusting to how things changed. And like I said, he was ahead of things. He tried to learn. He learned a great deal. He watched more football than anyone else. And I think he once said the reason he brought Mike Shanahan in right after Tom was, the West Coast offense was just coming into being. And he brought Mike in to bring that in. But he still could not give up as much input as he wanted. And one of the problems, we mentioned it, you may have noticed, when Mike came in, he only allowed him to hire 3 coaches. And he kept a bunch of the old staff people, and they wouldn't adjust to Mike. And it really became a real battle back and forth. So I think, as he got older, I think he got a little bit more stubborn and less willing to kind of see the other side. And he kind of tried to flashback. I think the worst year was the second time he brought back Art Shell, and then a guy named Tom Walsh, who'd been there before and had coached under Sid Gilman. He was going to be the coordinator, and says, we're going to do the Sid Gilman offense again, which just didn't work anymore with the 7-step drops and hold the ball and make the reads. because he just didn't have time to do things like that. So, again, at the end, it was a little bit stubborn. But, the one thing, working with him and you say, how do you put up with it? Yeah, you just always appreciate it. He always wanted to win. Now, maybe we kind of lost sight of how it would be done, but yeah, it was still never dull, and the commitment, at least in his mind, was always there, and you had to appreciate that.
Where does that confidence in Al come from? We want to ask you about a chapter in the book here in a minute about Jamarcus Russell, as you're mentioning these moments that kind of led up to that draft in 2006. But where did that conviction come from in Al? That in the book you reference, his intellect, his tenacity, and his extreme confidence, and that's not arrogance. And I think that there's definitely a fine line there, but I think the way that you were very specific in saying the man was just extremely confident, where did that come from in him? Was that something that he just developed growing up from his childhood, or where did that confidence in his abilities, good or bad, what was the source of all of that?
Well, I think some of it's innate. I mean, and you hear about his growing up, and he was a very competitive person right from the start. And from his he wanted to win, and whatever it took, he went to the Citadel as a coach, and they ended up on probation. And he went to USC, and they ended up on probation. He would do anything to win and wanted to win, and he was really driven to be successful. And I didn't know. Brooklyn background, his street, he had some street in him as well. And I think his ability to identify with a wide range of people, from people that were from urban environments or rural environments, and, the one common denominator being football. But he could handle himself in any kind of situation. And like I said, he was a driven guy that, it's a great question. I just wish I had a more specific way to put it, but it's just the way I always knew him to be. And I think as strong as that was, it was probably harder for him to conceive that, things weren't going to work the way they did, and he had to make some adjustments. And you brought up DeMarcus. I can kind of lead into it. I think I know where you're going with it. Al, and if I miss your question, let me know. But I think he had great success. Back 60s, 70s, 80s, about bringing in players that weren't successful at other places that that became great players. Such as Willie Brown. He traded for him, becomes a Hall of Famer. And, he took Ethan Horton, was the number one pick, running back out of North Carolina by the Chiefs. And he's on the street, and we bring him in, and he becomes a Pro Bowl tight end. Todd Christensen, a guy on the street. And guys who were very edgy, he could deal with. And by dint of will, he could really keep them on the straight and narrow. And, when Jamarcus came in, there were two major differences. One, Al just physically wasn't up for it. I mean, he would try, but he just couldn't handle, being on top of something like that 24/7, whereas historically he could. And then number two, the system changed with Jamarcus was, he suddenly has $35 million in his pocket. And I always thought that if you ask Tom Brady, if he came into football, what would you like? Well, I want to make the team. I want to be a starter. I'd like to go to Super Bowls. I'd like to have the respect of my teammates, maybe marry a supermodel, and then make a lot of money. And he's pretty done that, and yet he still is driven. Where if you ask Jamarcus to make a list, what do you want to make out of football? Come out of football, he says, I'd like to make a lot of money. Well, he made all that money, and then he quit emotionally, and Al just didn't have the ability to reach him. Whereas, historically, he'd give these guys a few extra bucks. Well, there weren't a lot of extra bucks to give Jamarcus, and it wouldn't have affected that way. So I think those are the two things that made Jamarcus. I think we mentioned in the chapter, and we let Al know this was going to be a problem because at LSU they needed someone to wake him up. They needed someone to take him to class. They needed someone to make sure he got to practice. And even at our place, we'd hired a guy named Donnie Martin, whose whole job was to take care of Jamarcus. And he kind of forgot about that. And we're on the bus going to Houston, and everyone's on the bus, but who? Jamarcus. And I'm sitting right behind this Donnie Martin, say, Donnie, Marcus is not. And he runs off the bus. He gets fired the next day because So we tried, but it just wasn't going to happen.
Again, Raider Nation, we're talking to John Kingdon. Spent 33 years with the Oakland Raiders. John, you mentioned Jamarcus. It's definitely just one of the biggest eyesores, I think, in recent Raider history, and maybe even throughout Raider history. Take us back to prior to drafting him. It's well documented that a lot of people were against bringing in Jamarcus with that pick, but that's who Al wanted. What were those conversations like? Did Al give you guys any ear, or was it simply we're getting him and that's it?
Well, he when I first got there, I was working, and just to go way back, Al got fixated. He wanted to take a couple of running backs later in the draft, and the guy that we wanted was Neil Anderson, who was a very good running back out of Florida, went to the Bears in the first round. And we ended up taking a guy named Bob Bukowski, who was might have been the worst pick we ever took in the first round.
I was going to say, who?
Yeah, you wouldn't. Maybe his claim to fame was, and it's in the book, we talk about him. But I think after he left football, he and his wife were running an escort service and got arrested.
Oh, boy.
There you go.
You could look it up. But anyway, after the draft, Ron Wolf was running. I said, "Geez, Ron, how could this have happened?" And he said, "Look, you haven't been here that long. This draft was geared to take a guy named Vance Mueller and Napoleon McCallum. Napoleon became a very, very good player, and Al liked to find the sleeper. And this guy Vance Mueller went to Occidental, and he played a couple of years, but it just wasn't there. But the point, so when Todd Marinovich came out, we very much wanted Brett Favre. We have that in the chapter where, we wanted, and Al wanted Marinovich, and I said, look, this is going to be our battle, is we got to get him off Marinovich, and we just couldn't do it. He got fixated on names, and Jamarcus became the guy. Now, God, he was so talented. It's just such a crime to watch the films. Then he had an unbelievable workout at the school, and Lane Kiffin, the short time he was there, he was an excellent personnel guy, coming from college, all the recruiting. And one time we were waiting to go into our afternoon meetings, and the door was shut, and someone, that's Lane. He's making his case not to take Jamarcus. And Al just would get incredibly stubborn about things like that. Look, I can take care of it. I'll handle it. And again, he just couldn't do it. And the real tragedy is, we really wanted Calvin Johnson. Now, let me say this: in the film I watched on Jamarcus, he was just so talented, and he wasn't an evil person. He just had no work ethic and very little pride in everything. In fact, like I said, in everything. And there was a man named George Karras worked in pro personnel. He loved cars, and we were at training camp, and he points out this white Rolls Royce, and he says, "See, look at that car," which was a very nice car. He said, "Yeah, that's Jamarcus's Rolls Royce, and look at it. It's dirty." So I think he was consistent.
That sums it up right there, doesn't it?
Which I thought really drove it home. Now, in some defense to Jamarcus, his second year, the last two games of the year, he played really well and knocked two teams out of the playoffs, including John Gruden's Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
I remember that.
And we said, "Geez, maybe we can reach him," and this and that. And he showed back up in camp out of shape and hadn't done a thing. And the classic story was we would give the quarterbacks DVDs to study the other teams. They give them cut-ups and the like. And so he brought the DVD back, and they asked, "Did you see?" "Oh, yeah, I studied a lot. I really feel good. I'm confident about our game plan." Anyway, they took the disc, and somebody wanted to watch it. And they put it in the machine. It was a blank disc. And they didn't do it intentionally. But yeah, it was a blank disc. And so he just, so he obviously hadn't even put it in the machine to even pretend that he had watched it. So that was Jamarcus. And and the problem with the system now is, back when you could bury your mistakes. This time, we took a multi-million-dollar hit on our cap, and it took a while to recover.
You mentioned Gruden. You mentioned that the closing out of that season and knocking him out of the playoffs. And I remember that very distinctively. And it was, I remember being really encouraged by that win. And it was a little bit of revenge for the Raiders to get back at at Gruden, and especially considering the Super Bowl. And I want to ask you a couple things about Gruden. Is it, number one, was that the most devastating loss for Al and for the organization, was losing to Gruden?
You know what? I think you realize there are a bunch of them. If you really want to go back, how far do you go back? The Rob Lytle fumble in Denver.
Oh, sure, the non-fumble, anyways, right?
The non-fumble, the immaculate reception. What was the other? I was going to come up with one I just blanked on. But the Super Bowl, I think he really that was the last straw for him, and that had to be, if not the worst, certainly the most closest to memory. And the thing that really upset me, I was talking to Bruce Allen, and we got a very nice ring as AFC champions. So I talked to Bruce, and Bruce Allen was there. I said, Bruce, and they had already been discussing what the ring was going to be like. So I said to Bruce, what was that ring going to be like if we'd won? And he really says, oh, don't ask, because it would have been just unbelievable. But that pretty much was it. And, from that point on, we just didn't have a winning season. So, yeah, that loss really was really hurt.
Well, prior to that, obviously, I think one of those other games you're reference is the Tuck rule. That was just an absolutely brutal game, and really led to Gruden's departure. And so, in knowing that how tough that Super Bowl loss was to Gruden, let's back up a little bit and lead up to that. If the Tuck rule if that game doesn't happen, and it's timely now because I think NFL Network's actually got a special out right now in their timeline series where they're doing one on the Tuck rule. But if the Raiders win that game, Gruden, right, for all intents and purposes, remains our head coach. And is Al at that point simply forced to deal with Gruden? As we talked about earlier, Al didn't want anybody to be bigger than him or bigger than the Raiders, and ultimately that's where Gruden ended up. But if the Raiders win that game in New England, is he absolutely forced to just stick to it and to stick with Gruden as a head coach, which obviously, that would have changed the trajectory of the Raiders drastically from that point forward. But what do you think about that? What do you think about not only Gruden ongoing, but then that Tuck rule game itself?
I think you hit it right on the head, and that one it truly drives me crazy, just forgetting losing the game. But I agree with you 100%. And another reason, one, that he would have been there was because we were going to go play Pittsburgh the next week. And, in fact, John Herrera is on we put you on the sidelines during the Tuck rule, and John Herrera pulls out his phone. He's calling the Pittsburgh hotel. We'll be there next week. And we were not going to lose to Cordell Stewart. There's no way it would have happened. Now, we would have gone to the Super Bowl, and I think you're absolutely right. There's no way he could have avoided not, giving John and the contract was done. That's what the insanity of it was. Bruce Allen had got the thing done. Everyone agreed to it, and somebody changed the contract, and without telling the agent, without telling Bruce, and that kind of blew it up. But if they hadn't done that, like I said, if we had gone to the Super Bowl, we would have played the Rams. Now, I'm not sure we would have beaten them. New England had really good safeties, to Bucky Jones, and I'm not sure who the other one was, but we had very average safeties. A guy named Johnny Harris and Anthony Garcett was just, and they weren't very good. And I thought in that Super Bowl, the New England safeties really took their receivers out of the game. But there's so many what ifs, and obviously you're a big fan. This is just going to drive you crazy because it drives me crazy. Is if you want to go back to the 16th week of the season or the last week of the season, we're playing the Jets, and if we win that game, we get the bye the first week, and then the Jets would then go to New England for the first game. Yeah. So it comes down. We're up, I think, by 2 points, and there's 2 minutes to go in the game or whatever it was, and we've got 3rd and 2. Now we got this great short yardage with John Ritchie and Zach Crockett, and no one can stop. But we run a play action, and Roland Williams is all alone, 10 yards down the field. And Rich must have just been so excited. He overthrew him by 5 feet. I mean, it's just a pitch and catch play. And then the Jets get the ball back and they kick a 52-yard field goal to beat us. So that leads us to go to New England. That's one what if.
Wow.
number two, we should have had the early game, and it wasn't snowing at the early time.
Right,
so
yeah.
that's number two. Number three, we had this. We had a 3rd and 1 play. If we get the first down, game's over. Again, this great short yardage, and we're going to run the play, and no one stopped us all year with this, with Richie and Crockett, and the line's great. And what happens is Richard Seymour comes in unblocked, and John Ritchie, just gets stalemated, and the play doesn't go. And I remember asking Aaron Cromer what the heck happened, and Frank Middleton, who was the right guard, was a good player, but he went to the wrong guy. He went after the linebacker, and Cromer said that Middleton goes, uh-oh. He went. That's
the last guy you want to not block too. By the way, Seymour. My gosh.
Now here's the last piece to drive you crazy. I think the play occurred with like 1:52 to go in the game. If this play had happened with 9 seconds earlier, with 2:01 to go in the game, it would not have been reviewed. Because New England had no more timeouts, and they were not reviewing turnovers at that point. Yeah. So we should have put a what if chapter. I wanted to do that. We didn't do it, but
you're making me mad, John.
I know I can't. I'll be honest. I can't watch those shows on the Tuck game because. And here's the last one. I don't know if you've read it. Jeff Beeren was a lawyer with our team. He was in the competition committee meeting after that season with the Tuck Pool, and this will upset you, no less. So they're discussing the play, and Mike Holman gets up and says, "Look, if you show this play in a bar to 50 people, and 50 people say it's a fumble, it's a fumble."
It's a fumble.
And then they come up with this logic. Mike Pereira. His arm was coming forward. It was a natural motion to throw it. And then Jim Fossil gets up, who was the head coach of the Giants at that point, and says, "Hey, there's not a coach in this league that would teach you to bring your arm forward and then bring it back to throw the ball." So that's BS. And then finally, Tagliabue just said, "Look, when the discussion's over, we're not going to put an asterisk next to Bob Kraft's Super Bowl win." So you hit a nerve, and it all came flowing out.
John, I feel like we could talk to you forever. I think it'd be fun to have you back just for a regular story segment, man. I mean, geez Louise here. Well, we got to get going, but one thing we always ask our guests before we leave is we always have them kind of give a message to Raider Nation, and typically it's a fan. Like we've had the Violator on to do that kind of stuff. But I think with you, because you have an intimate knowledge of the Raiders organization after working there for so many years, you were there when they moved to L.A., when they moved back from L.A., and now they're getting ready to move to Vegas. What's your overall thoughts on the Raiders franchise as a whole right now? And then as they get ready to move to Vegas, how will that pan out for the Raiders in your opinion?
Well, sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. And I say like the person they should be most thankful for is a man named Ray Farmer, who was the general manager in Cleveland when they drafted Johnny Manziel in the first round instead of Derek Carr. So I think
good spin.
So God bless Ray Farmer. I think the thing that I take away from the time is stability. They seem to have the right coach. They seem to have the right quarterback. And I think they've done a good job in giving him the tools, number one, to protect the quarterback, although it's fallen off a little bit. But they've invested very heavily in the offensive line. They've done they drafted very well at receiver, and they've signed, Crabtree is a free agent, the tight end is a free agent. I think maybe we need to get a little more consistent running attack, but I think the tools are there, the stability is there. Jack Del Rio seems to be doing very well, and everyone's happy there. So you've got the consistency. I think I heard the stadium's now been put off another year in Las Vegas. So enjoy the Raiders. They should be here right through the 2020 season, and you never know what'll happen. Maybe something will work out to keep them here as well after that.
Well, John, appreciate you coming on. Once again, he's John Kingdon, spent 33 years at the Oakland Raiders, co-author of the recent book, Al Davis, Behind the Raiders Shield. John, do you have any more books in the works, or are you doing book tours, or what are you up to these days with that?
Well, we're doing as many appearances as we can, and shows like yourself, and the books is on Amazon, and you can get Kindle, and we're just coming out with the Audible, and we have a website where you can order it directly, behindtheshield.net, and there's a spot if you want to get it autographed. We can do it there as well. I did a show with Greg Papa. I'm sure you're aware, Greg, the play-by-play guy, and when I wrote the book. I thought, well, I'm going to write a book, or we're writing the book. It's coming out. The first question is it going to be a rip job? I said, no, it's going to be an honest, fair, balanced tour. Anyway, Greg Papa, very, very much a fan of Al Davis, very close with him. And Greg came out and said, this is the best book that's ever been written on Al. It's the most accurate because I've read every book on Al. And he summed it up. He said, the book's a treasure. So that's been kind of fun. And so we're trying to get as much exposure as we can, and so far so good.
Well, I hate that we're such a big drop off from Greg Papa to Raiders Fan Radio, but we do definitely appreciate you being here. But I gotta second that as well. I just really want to commend you on a job well done on the book. I went into reading it expecting a kind of a biography and a linear storytelling of Al Davis, and that's not what it is. It's like you said, it's firsthand accounts of stories of interactions with the man and the team, and I think it's an incredible insight for us as a fan into that world in the way that Sonny and I often reference on our show, that there's a lot of things that go on with, it doesn't have to be the Raiders. It could be your favorite NFL team or sports team as a whole. There's just a lot of things that as fans we're unaware of. And there's bigger things that are going on that lead into decisions that the team makes. And that's what your book is. Your book is the details, the inner workings of it, and it's just a fascinating read. So Raider Nation, get a hold of this thing. It is just an excellent read and very enjoyable for any Raider fan. I can't recommend it enough.
Well, I sure appreciate it. That's exactly what we were going for, and I'm truly glad that you enjoyed it. And if you want to put a rating down on Amazon, I wouldn't be upset about that either.
Deal.
Will do. And again, talking with John Kingdon, author of Al Davis, Behind the Raiders Shield. If you haven't picked it up yet, go to behindtheshield.net or just go on Amazon, type it up. I'm going to pick it up next week when it's the audio version. I'm kind of a lazy guy that way, John, so I appreciate you putting out the audio version for us.
Thank you so much. This has been so much fun.
All right. Thanks for coming on, John. Take care.
I sure appreciate it. Bye-bye.
All right, Murf. After listening to it again, I'm just so thankful that he came on the show. We were reaching out to Steve, one of the other authors of that book, and he sent John our way. And to be honest, I didn't know who John was prior to the interview, and so we looked him up, did some research, and just a humble guy, really cool guy. Didn't really have an agenda, just wanted to talk about the Raiders, and that was pretty fun. And we had talked to him a little bit before the show and a little bit after the show, and I think one of the coolest things is he just had stories for days, hearing the story about the guy who was hired by the Raiders just to monitor Jamarcus Russell. That was crazy. And then they're on the bus and they're like, yo, where's Jamarcus? And the next day the guy got fired because of it, dude. That's just that we all knew Jamarcus was a bust and how awful it was, but to hear that inside stuff was like, oh my gosh, what the heck? Sometimes, in light of the guy in Miami, the offensive line coach, the trouble he got into, the conversation shifted to the Baller Show on HBO. They talked about how, the Baller Show is made set to make the NFL look more crazier than it is. Well, not really. They tame it down to show it on the Ballers and stuff.
Yeah.
And so talking about Jamarcus just kind of made me start thinking about that. And then, just nuts, And then he tells us that story about how Bud Light, and remember that with John Madden and Al Davis and stuff, how they wanted Al to do it, but Al was like, I think you should get my friend John Madden to do it, and then John did it, and that kind of started his career on TV and all that kind of stuff, So just really, really cool inside information that you just don't hear a lot. And as a fan, now I can gush about it. I mean, gosh, that was just so freaking cool. I remember afterwards when we hung up the phone with him, we just we're like, duh. So thank you to Steve for setting that up. Thank you again to John for taking the time to come on the show. And hopefully in the future we can have you back. If you haven't read the book yet, it's coming out on an audiobook. I'm waiting for that because I like to listen to that while I do other stuff. And so the book is Al Davis, Behind the Raiders' Shield. And it's not what you would expect. It's not like a biography on Al. It's more of a collection of stories. And Murf, you've read it, so I'll let you kind of dissect a little more.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's fascinating, and like you said, it's a collection of stories. It's not a linear story where you start at back when Al Davis was born on July 4th. Blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? It's not like that. It just kind of jumps right in. The first chapter is called Crafting an Image, and it just starts in on everything that we know about Al, about the way that from the color scheme to the way that the team is represented, its image, its marketing, its everything. That was all Al Davis, and he was a genius in that. And so it kind of goes over the things that he did, the decisions that he made that all led to those things, whether it's, just win, baby, and pride and poise and commitment to excellence and all the greatness of the Raiders and the fire that burns brightest is its will to win, and on and on and on and on and on. Right. And so it gets into all of that stuff in it, and then just takes off from there. And it's just really neat. It's really very interesting insight. Before I get into the contents of the book, again, I want to celebrate John and the what he did and by coming on the show, and he has done an amazing job of assembling all of this stuff. So I really want to give him props on this. That I've read a lot of books and I've read a lot of biographies and read sports tales, and a lot of times, they try to make them these big grandiose tales and follow these story arcs and these character paths and all that. That's not what this is. He just comes out and just kind of just gets it all out there, and he just gushes about these firsthand accounts. And so I think that's what's really neat. And so he does a great job of kind of taking you in to the draft room, or taking you into the office, or taking you into the backseat of a car or a limo or on an airplane or wherever, all the different places where these interactions have happened. And he doesn't pull punches. He's absolutely not critical of Al in a negative way. Never refers to him negatively. So it's not about, he doesn't take any shots or anything like that, but he also portrays him very much the way that he was, foul-mouthed, short-tempered, anxious, you know what I mean? Like all of those, he very much puts that stuff out there. And that's the part of Al that we never got to see as fans, because Al was so good at crafting the image. We never saw the insecurity. We never saw those things in him. So just absolute kudos to John, and also to Bruce Kebrick, and of course Steve Corcoran on their job of assembling these stories and putting the book together. So all that said, it is fascinating to see these things break down. So I mentioned it starts with crafting the image, and then it goes on to very specific stories about John Matuzak and John Gruden and Lane Kiffin, Jamarcus Russell, Marcus Allen, Kenny Stabler. It gives all these tales of these specifics that happened in these interactions with these players, things that as fans, we don't get to see. So, we as fans see, well, Marcus Allen and Al Davis are fighting, and all of a sudden Marcus is playing in Kansas, or Marcus is benched, and then Marcus is all of a sudden playing in Kansas City. Well, what was going on with all that? We don't know. It's in the book. When they drafted Jamarcus Russell, and there was those tales of work ethic and addiction and all the other things that were going on, and we wondered, well, maybe the Raiders didn't know about all this stuff. No, they did. It's in the book. John Gruden and his elevating, the fans elevating John Gruden into becoming the face of the Raiders. Al doesn't like that. It's in the book. So it does a great job of showing us, pulling back the curtain a little bit and showing us what went on in the halls of Alameda and the halls of Los Angeles. And I got to say, Sonny, Al Davis did some amazing things in his career. And we talked about that in the front end of the interview. The things that he did to hire Amy Trask, the gender barriers that he broke, the minorities that he hired to break those barriers, all the things that Al Davis did was absolutely amazing and progressed the sport and society forward. That said, he did a lot of things that cut off his nose despite his face. And I don't want to say I lost respect for Al, but I've definitely got an insight into Al Davis now after reading the book that I'm kind of like, I don't want to say I'm let down. It's just I don't quite have him on the pedestal maybe that I used to. There was, like you just mentioned, okay, I'll give you here's a brief example. The story with John Madden. The story goes is that it was originally offered to Al. Al said, I don't want to do it. Give it to John. And then John goes on, and that essentially catapults him into this amazing career, right? Well, who's taking credit for that now? Because by telling that story, Al Davis. So now Al's making it about Al. And when you read the book, you see that it's all about Al. And it doesn't matter that that there were times that compromised their team's ability to win on the field. If it wasn't directly related to Al, if he wasn't getting the credit and never getting the blame for the negativity, he would stifle it. And it's that part of it as a fan. I'm like,
it's hard to hear.
It's hard to hear because there's so many things that were like, talk about Gruden is 2 chapters in the book. There's a lot of Gruden in this book. And kind of the old, what if, I mean, Sonny, when you look at the history of the Raiders from 84 on to present day, there's only a handful of first place finishes, and they're mostly with John Gruden. Heck, there's only a handful of finishes that aren't 3rd or 4th place, and they're John Gruden. John Gruden was he was a huge reason, was the reason the Raiders were becoming. Al Davis didn't want Rich Gannon. John Gruden brought in Rich Gannon. Al Davis didn't want a lot of the things that led to the Raiders' success. So anyways, I know I'm kind of rambling here at this point, but the gist of it is this, Raider fans. Go out, get the book, buy the audiobook, whatever it is. If you are a diehard Raider fan, as I know you are if you're listening to this show, it is a fascinating read, and you will absolutely love it. I mowed through it. Like it was nothing. I mean, I just soaked this stuff right up. It's fantastic.
Murf read the book faster than he just spent talking about it.
Can you tell I liked it?
Anyway, again, pick up the book if you're interested in the Raiders. If you're interested in Al Davis, it's called Al Davis Behind the Raiders Shield. It's a great read, and again, thank you to John for coming on the show. And right after this next break, we're gonna briefly talk about the Raiders versus the Ravens and give you our affable recap of the game.
You're listening to Raiders Fan Radio with Sonny and Murf, a podcast by Raiders fans for Raiders fans.
Murf, a football game was played on Sunday in Oakland with the Raiders and the Ravens. And by the time everybody's listening to this podcast Wednesday morning, Tuesday night, a lot's been said about it already. Lots been said about the game against the Ravens. And I think the Ravens game really not cemented, but it gave legitimacy to a lot of concerns people are having about the Raiders over the last several games. And I think not so much this game in particular, but this game plus the Bronco game plus the Redskin game equals legitimate questions now. You know what I'm saying? Like the Redskins game, we came away from that game, we were like, this is an isolated incident. This is distracted by the anthem. We're going to stay in the locker room. They got out early. They knelt, they stood, whatever, East Coast. Like, there was a lot of things that were like, it sucks, but we can see where they lost. The following week against Denver's great defense, on the road, tough opponent, Carr gets hurt, but we still had a chance late. It's okay. It's okay. It's understandable. But the Ravens game, despite EJ Manuel getting the start, that was kind of the game that was like, holy crap, like, is this what we're going to look forward to for this year? Is this the Raiders team that we're going to get? You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? Like,
yeah, because it's not like Derek Carr's in that game and all of a sudden, oh, yeah, we'd have won that by 40. No.
Yeah, exactly. And so, it's kind of the game that, like, that what I see, it's the game that pushed everybody over the edge. Like, everybody was still kind of like, we can still do it. We can still do it. And then once the Ravens game happened, then it was like, boom. The onslaught happened, right?
Yeah, and then once at the end of the game, when you see Sean Smith hugging Jeremy Maclin and high-fiving Mike Wallace and loving on each other, that sent me through to freaking the ceiling, dude. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me.
So Philip Robinson III, he's a writer at RaiderRamble.com, also has a podcast called By Any Means. I encourage you guys to check it out. He wrote an article, and this is the epitome of what I'm talking about. Del Rio's ship is sinking and Todd Downing is drowning. Love the title.
Nice.
Del Rio's ship is sinking and Todd Downing is drowning. Right? I mean, but in his article, he references, Murf, that the defense is still they're what we expected. He makes the point, he says in this, the last paragraph before the Downing part, this defense is undoubtedly lacking pieces that it needs to be able to contend with better teams. Schematically, it has been better with the addition of Pagano. But under Norton, the defense has never been better than the middle of the pack, due largely in part to being unable to hide deficiencies or find adaptable solutions to working problems. Given his body of work in the past offseason, it would have behooved the Raiders to find a more improved defensive coordinator rather than replace the head of the number 6 scoring offense in 2016, right? We all called for Musgrave's head, and, we got it. But now we're like, oh, man, Musgrave would be fun to have right now, right? But the defense is still simply the defense. And then he goes on to talk about Downing, how Downing is drowning, and lack of, ability to adjust and all that kind of stuff, But it's like the Ravens game was the one that really, caused me to say, and then several cuss words after the fact. Like, Redskins game, it was okay. It was an okay loss, out of division, didn't matter that much, whatever. Broncos on the road, tough opponent, tough defense. We were still in the game. If Cook catches one of those touchdown passes, we most likely beat the Broncos. But this Ravens game was like, even with the backup quarterback, we should have smoked them, dude. We should have smoked them. I don't care. Connor Cook could have been back there, and we should have smoked that team. But with the talent we supposedly have on our team, something happened. And this was the game that really caused me to start thinking, man, 8-8 would be great this year. Because we still have the Cowboys, we have the Patriots, and we have the Chiefs twice. And if you're...
And the Broncos again.
And the Broncos again. And if you, as a Raiders fan, can challenge yourself to think objectively, take off the silver and black glasses, thinking objectively, Cowboys, Patriots, Chiefs twice, and the Broncos, you think we're going to beat all those teams with what you've seen so far on the field, even with Carr back? I don't know, man. And that's 5 losses right there, Murph.
Yep.
That puts us at 2-8.
Yep.
That means we have to win every other game. I don't know, man. I'm not calling it quits yet. Obviously, I'll always root for the Raiders. But as far as my hopes for this season, playoffs, Super Bowl, yeah, Super Bowl's out the window in my eyes right now. Playoffs, that's going to be a stretch.
If you can't beat the Ravens at home, what shot are you going to have to beat the Patriots or to beat Kansas City and Kansas? You know what I mean? Like, that's where the objective thinking comes in. Like, it's very logical. Like, it's just the way that it is, man. Look, we don't like it, but it's the way that it is, And when you look at, when you look at that reaction and the flack that we get, on saying things like that, and they go, "Oh, watch the Raiders go on a run. You guys will feel stupid." No, we won't. We'll be happier than pigs in crap. We'll be excited. We hope we're dead freaking wrong and that this thing flips around and we go undefeated the rest of the year. Nothing would please me more. But all we can do is go based off of what we see and what our eyes tell us and what our ears tell us. And what those tell us is that this team is not playing very well and it's not getting any better. And the way that as you mentioned in the article, the lack of attention to address the deficiencies on defense, I've been screaming from the rooftops and I'm going to keep screaming it until something changes. For 3 linebackers that are running this football team, why is it that we don't have any linebackers? And I get Markel Lee will have a nice play here or there, but he's not balling out like Zach Cunningham is for the Houston Texans. Anybody catch that game? That guy is running all over the place, sticking people, making tackles, and in the meantime, our first rounder is on the bench. And the other guy and our second round pick is on the freaking IR until week 8 or 9 or whatever the heck it is. So it's it's just frustrating, man. And that's where, like I said, it just started to kind of to boil over. And, the one lone bright spot that we have on defense really right now is Khalil Mack, that he's the guy that can hit a home run at any play, but he strikes out every game. Where is he? And I get it. He gets a lot of doubles.
He's been having sacks. He's had sacks.
Yeah, a couple.
The Ravens game was the only game that he got blanked on.
What I'm saying though is you're just not hearing his name like we used to. Not you would expect from a defensive player of the year. And I get it. He gets double teamed and he gets a lot of attention. I get all that. But if he's getting all these double teams, then why isn't Bruce Irvin making plays? Why is it James Kowser the only other name that we hear?
That's my question. Where's Bruce Irvin?
Why is it seriously?
We haven't heard his name all year, dude.
That's it. I mean, anyways, it's just like you said. It just really started to boil over this week. And look, if they're going to get it back on track, the time is now. This is it. We don't have the luxury. I know it's only 5 games in. It's only 3 games. Yeah, I get it. But we'll look at the way that it's trending, though. And if it continues to trend that way for another week, all of a sudden we're 2-4. We're in the bottom. Think about that. We're in the bottom of the division, and we're 4 games behind the team that's in front of us.
We're 0-2 in the division.
Yeah,
I hate to break it. 5 games. That's 1/3 of the season. You only play 16 of them. 5 games is a third of the season. That is a solid sample size to base an assessment of a team on. You can be Pollyanna all you want. You can say, well, if this play happens this way, and if this guy is held here, and if this blocker picks this up, and if we just – you can explain it all you want. I mean, you can go back and say, well, Cooper got open 5 times against the Ravens, and EJ didn't see him, and EJ was on single read only, and Denver Carr was on, don't change the play. Like you can explain it all you want, but you're still guilty of committing the crime. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, that's what happened, but why did that happen? Why was that the game plan to not let Carr check out of plays against Denver? Right? Why was that the game plan? That was, and I get it. It wasn't Todd Downing putting the reins on Carr. It wasn't like he didn't trust Carr. That was the game plan. But that sounds like a stupid game plan. Yeah, maybe I just don't understand it because I'm not an offensive coach in the NFL. But if you call a run play up the middle, a halfback dive or in the A gap or something like that, and they got 8 in the box, you check out of that. That's common sense. But to not check out of it because you're so stubborn to stick to your game plan, that's a rookie move by Todd Downing, I think, in my eyes.
That's arrogant.
In my uneducated eyes.
Freaking arrogant. It's arrogant. I mean, and again, it works against what we were told in the offseason. We were told that they're just like brothers, and he trusts him with this, he trusts him with that, and he's going to give him all this.
But I don't think it's a lack of trust, Murph. I think that was just the game plan for the Broncos, which makes me scratch my head even more.
I get
because
that,
you're right.
But here's what I'm saying, though. You think that they're going to – Tom Brady is not going to be able to check out of plays because they're playing the Broncos? No. You think that Ben Roethlisberger or Drew Brees or Aaron Rodgers Mike McCarthy is going to limit Aaron Rodgers' ability to check out of plays at the line of scrimmage because they're playing the Broncos? BS, man. No, you don't do that. You don't change just because. No, that's not. If that is the game plan, you're right. It's stupid. And we even as fans, my and your uneducated eyes, other than us watching the game and being fans of it, yes, we can tell you that's not smart. Like, why would you pigeonhole your quarterback who, again, all offseason we were told was going to be given the ability to do more on his own, to go out there, to do his surveying. Look, that's what makes great quarterbacks great. That's what made Peyton Manning good enough to win a Super Bowl at 90 years old when he could barely throw a 10-yard out route. It was because he could dissect the defense with his eyes, make a call at the line of scrimmage, make a change, and enable his team's success. Why in the heck would you not do that with your young, smart quarterback like Derek Carr? It just doesn't make any sense to me. And then here's the last part. You know what drives me nuts about watching a Ravens game? You know what the name of the kicker is? Justin Tucker. And look, Sonny, I try not to use salty language too much. I'm a man of faith. I try to keep it a little bit clean. But every time I watch a dang Ravens game and Tucker's on the field, it reminds me of a George Carlin skit about a guy named Tucker.
Cody and Dylan and Cameron and Tucker. Hi, Tucker. I'm Todd. Hi, Todd. I'm Tucker. Tucker sucks. And Tucker's friend, Kyle.
F Tucker, Tucker sucks. The best 3-word joke ever.
Again, I don't want to dissect the Ravens game. We're going to move on. To me, the Ravens game summed up and gave legitimacy to some of the issues and the worries that I have for this season. And right after the break, we're going to talk about 3 reasons why the Raiders could potentially beat the Chargers and 3 reasons why the Chargers could potentially beat the Raiders in what I'm calling a must-win game for the Raiders.
We have a go for main engine start. And we have main engine start. 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff of Discovery.
Hello, I'm astronaut Jose Hernandez, and you're listening to Sonny and Murf on Raiders Fan Radio.
I feel like I'm floating away from Sandra Bullock in space. Was that the way it happened in that movie?
Yeah. That was a good movie. Gravity. Yeah. Wow. Spoiler alert.
Great movie.
Spoiler alert.
Great movie. Oh, come on. It's been out for 2 years. Okay. 3 reasons. This segment is brought to you by water because it helps you do a podcast. But 3 reasons. What we do here is we talk about 3 reasons. Each of us take a side. They're designed preseason so that way Murf has to talk about why the Chargers are going to beat the Raiders. I mean, how can you be a Raiders fan and do something like that, huh? So I give 3 reasons why I think the Raiders will win against the Chargers. And after the last few weeks' performances, I had to search hard. And then Murf gives his 3 reasons why he thinks the Chargers could potentially beat the Raiders. Now, by no means are we Chargers fans. This is just an objective way to look at your opponent. And this is what any good football team does. You study your opponent to find out what their good qualities are. This is a hard week for both of us because I had to look at the Raiders and like, what's good about the Raiders? And he had to look at the Chargers to say, what's good about the Chargers? And we're like, man, F this episode. It's going to suck, right? So Murph will start first so that way I can end on why the Raiders should win the game. Go ahead, Murph.
All right. You know, remember the band
I just called you a goat head, Murph. Okay, now go ahead.
All right, thanks, goat head. You remember the band the Melvins?
Yeah.
All right. Well, the Melvins are 1 and 2. I'll start with Melvin number 1 on why the San Diego Chargers have a chance to win the football game this week against the Raiders. So the first Melvin is Melvin Gordon. Last week against the Giants, he ran the ball 20 times for 105 yards, and we don't have inside linebackers to help with that. You know, the Raiders are doing a lot of cheating. They're bringing up Reggie Nelson. They're bringing up Carl Joseph to help out up against the run. In fact, you could even see Jack Del Rio is screaming from the sideline during the game last week, "Come on, Reg," because Reggie was supposed to come up and help out on a play, and he didn't. And I forget who it was.
Shocker.
Yeah, I know, right? They got loose into the Raiders' backfield there, or secondary, which running back it was for the Ravens. But anyways, point being is that right now we are vulnerable. Raiders are vulnerable in the run game, and Melvin Gordon's bringing it, man. Melvin Gordon is having a decent year so far, and, he's getting good blocking up front. And so unless the Raiders are willing to give the, secondary single coverage and depend on guys like Sean Smith to cover Keenan Allen, then we're going to need to keep them safeties back playing a little bit, and therefore dependent on the linebackers to handle the run game, and that is going to be a challenge for them. So I think reason number one why I'm going to say that a lot, by the way. The reason number one why the Los Angeles Chargers, by the way,
just call the Chargers, man.
Every time we see LAC on a dang scoreboard, I think of the Clippers. But anyway, that's reason number one why I think the Clippers have a chance to win this game.
The Clippers. Okay. Reason number one why I think the Raiders are going to win the game against the formerly San Diego Chargers. Someone on the Raiders team or the coaching staff has to be pissed. You're a professional athlete. You are in the media spotlight. You were one of the highest betted on teams in what's going to be your new city, Las Vegas, before the season. You were one of the most talked about teams in the offseason for winning the Super Bowl and usurping the AFC crown from the Cheatriots. You were talked about as being the best if not the best division in all of football. You had a homecoming story in getting Marshawn Lynch out of retirement. You had the highest paid quarterback to date when he signed his contract in Derek Carr, who is a great guy on and off the field. You had the addition of free agents coming in that were supposed to add on to a high-powered offense. You had some rookies picked up in very high rounds that were supposed to make immediate impacts. You had all of these things going for you. And suddenly, 5 weeks into the season, you're basically being dismissed by many in the media of the NFL. Deion Sanders said it, I think, a couple weeks ago after the Redskins game. He stated, maybe we crowned the Raiders too soon. If you are a grown man, you take pride in your work. My father taught me that from a very early age. If nothing else, you take pride in what you do. If your boss asks you to sweep a concrete slab, you sweep that slab better than anybody else has ever swept that slab before. And then you get to move up, right? You take pride in what you do, no matter what it is you're doing. Somebody on that team has to be pissed off. And that certain somebody has to rally this team to do something. Otherwise, this is going to implode, Murf. This is going to implode bad if this season goes south. You're already seeing it with that fan and Donald Penn. You saw a bunch of stuff after last week's game. You had a guy pissing in the stands. Gorillas or Violets right there next to him, right? Couple seats down. You had a guy rip it out and just piss in the stands. You had pictures of dudes laying in their own puke. You had a guy sitting in the stands throwing up right in his lap. You had a guy challenging an offensive lineman to a fight after the game. This team has been ridiculed. They're getting made fun of. They're back to the memes of yesteryear that we thought were long gone. Somebody in the Raiders organization has to be pissed off, has to have some pride and rally the troops. And if that's Jalen Richard, great. Derek Carr, great. Khalil Mack, great. Bruce Irvin, who cares who it is? But somebody needs to step up. And I think and hope somebody will.
Let's hope you're right. Let's hope we do. We hope so people see a leader rise up, right? Much like Bruce Wayne or something from the ashes. Hopefully we see that. All right. So second in my list of Melvins is Melvin Ingram, this time featuring Joey Bosa on bass. That's right. Melvin Ingram and Joey Bosa are a formidable, I think that's a very conservative way to put it, a formidable matchup for the Raiders off the edges as their pass rush. This is what we had hoped that Mack and Irvin were going to be and haven't been, at least not to this point. That is a 1-2 punch that is getting some serious production. And when you look at the struggles that our team has had already in handling the pass rush, man, they are just going to have their hands full on this day. Now, coming into the season, I really wasn't worried about it considering all of the success that the Raiders had last year in protecting Carr, other than the one time that Donald Penn got his leg broken. But, even that, I mean, we forgive Penn greatly on that because, I mean, the guy got to make one play. It was a freak thing, right? But this year, and I know the idea of, well, they're not giving up a lot of pressure. They just have given up some sacks. Well, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. To me as a fan, it doesn't matter what the numbers say. To me, what matters is what I see. And what I see is our quarterback under duress on the reg. I mean, like that's what counts. I don't care if it's counted as a pressure, counted as a this, or counted. Doesn't matter. The fact is that defenses are getting pressure on our quarterback. And if we thought Ryan Kerrigan was a problem, wait till Melvin and Joey check into the game. So this is definitely a way that the Chargers have a chance to win the game against the Raiders in Oakland, is that if they start making a lot of noise in the Raider backfield and down goes Carr again, he's already got a hurt back. The last thing we need is for him to be under fire all game long. And hopefully that doesn't happen, but it's going to be a tall task for the Raider offensive line.
I agree. My second reason why the Raiders will beat the team formerly known as the San Diego Chargers is Murf. I think if we lose this game, someone just might lose their job. Because if we lose to the Chargers, we're bottom of the AFC West, more than 1/3 of the way into the season. We're 0-2 in division play. And I don't know who the Chiefs play next week, but they're looking like they're pretty good this year. So for the time being, we'll be the worst.
You're not a real fan.
Yeah. We'll be the worst team in the AFC West. Something's going to happen. Somebody's going to lose their job. Now, this could be a starting job on defense. This could be a starting job on offense. How many games does Cooper play and only catch one pass until he's not starting anymore, right? How many games does Cook drop a game-winning touchdown catch and then have a fumble, which causes us to go down 14-0 before he loses his starting job? How many games does Lynch not really be that productive before he loses the starting job to Rashard or something? You know what I'm saying? Like we just signed another cornerback. How many games did we play until TJ Carey or Smith, right? I mean, when is Smith? How long does he have? More than that, maybe even a greater thing is Norton or Downing. Maybe or one of those guys on the hot seat, right? I don't think Del Rio would ever be fired mid-season, but I kind of got a lot of I go back to Del Rio a lot on all this stuff, man. Like, he's pretty even keel, which is cool. But right now, he needs to be pissed. Maybe he's the one who needs to be pissed and light a fire on these guys. If we lose to the Chargers and this ends up being a 4-12 year, you think Del Rio comes back? Something's going to happen. If we lose to the Chargers, someone's losing their job. Coach, players, that's going to be where people start needing to go, okay, we need to change something. Something's not right, and we need to start fixing things before the season is a complete loss.
I agree, and hey, look, there's two ways to motivate people. They say one is to put money in his pocket, and one's to take it out. And there's going to be a lot of people getting money taken out of their pockets if the Raiders lose to the Chargers. That's for sure. Real quick to give you an answer on the Chiefs. So, tell me this isn't an easy path to the rest of the year. This is their schedule the rest of the way out: Steelers, Raiders, Broncos, Cowboys, Giants, Bills, Jets, Raiders, Chargers, Dolphins, Broncos. Other than the Broncos twice and maybe the Cowboys, listen, I hope that the Raiders give them a game. We hadn't beat them in 3 years? So, yep. They've already beat the Patriots. They've already beat the Eagles, who look like world beaters over there in the NFC. They beat beat the Redskins. They beat the snot out of the Texans. The Chiefs have it paved for them. So the Raiders have got to get it figured out and get it figured out quick, because the Chiefs are, have the potential to absolutely run away with the AFC West. We cannot take another loss in the division at all. So it's a must win. Absolutely. And that's not a far stretch to say. Doesn't matter what week it is. This is a must win for the Raiders. All right. Last one I got for the Chargers for a way that they could possibly win this game. It's not anything specific on the field. It's just a Charger thing. The Chargers get hot at weird times. When you look at their history, you could even point to really since Phillips been around, but they had some pretty solid years there early on, back in the LT days and all that stuff, and the Stay Classy San Diego years. But over the past 4 or 5 years, when you look at they're all over the place. Like they'll go 0-4 and then come out of nowhere and beat a top tier team. Like they're so sporadic and they're so random that this could be one of those games where, they beat the Giants last week and the Giants aren't that great, but now we got a kind of a wounded puppy here with the Raiders, man. And they got playmakers. So it's not like they're under talented. There's plenty of talent on this football team. When you look at, offensively and defensively, heck, we've seen enough Antonio Gates over the years. You know what I mean? He's still roaming around out there, all 150 years of him or however old he is, So I just think that they get hot at weird times and they win weird games. And now with the Raiders on the ropes, playing at home again, already after a home loss, unless they come out with that serious fire that you're talking about and that spark of leadership from somebody, then the Chargers got a really good shot to come out here and to take it to the Raiders. And you know how Phillip is, man. He'll be out there, bumping his gums and, complaining and hooting and flailing around and doing that whole thing, man. And, and then he'll get a win and go home and make a baby. Anyways, I think it's another reason why the Chargers could possibly have a chance to win this game. So that's it. That's all I got. This is I hate this damn segment.
I know. It kind of sucks when you're on that side.
Sucks on this side. Yeah.
We got to do it, Murph. Got to try to be objective here. Got to try to be objective here. Okay. My third reason, and this is hard, Murph. Like why is it this hard? Like coming into the season, you thought it would be easy to understand why the Raiders would win games and stuff like that.
Yeah, you're supposed to be able to go Carr and Mack as 1 and 2 every week.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Exactly. But instead it's kind of like, I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, I did a lot of searching for what should be my third reason, but I kept it in the theme of the first two. In the previous weeks of doing this podcast, doing this segment on the podcast, I always name players and schemes and stuff like that. But this one I'm going more kind of like ethereal maybe, or I don't know, something like that. Like
conceptual.
The first one was someone's got to be pissed. Someone needs to step up. Second one was someone might lose their job. So, jobs are on the line. Pride's on the line. Jobs on the line. And now I'm going to go with this. The season is on the line, I believe. If we do not beat the Chargers, this season is done. We're not making the playoffs. We'll be mediocre. And this will be forever known as the question mark season. Last year was the question mark final 3 games, potential Super Bowl run. This year will be the question mark season as regards to what the hell happened. And yes, I am calling a week 6 game as a must-win game for the Raiders. If we rattle off 4 straight losses,
Oof.
4 straight losses, Murph.
Oh, just sounds awful hearing you say that.
3 at home. 4 straight losses. No, I'm sorry. It'd be two at home.
2
right?
at home. Still.
Yeah. It'd be 2 at home. It'd be 2 at home, right? 4 straight losses. 2 of them at home. That means only 5 of their home games because we lose the one to the Patriots, and we lose to 2 division opponents in that span. You want to talk about a demoralized team? And here's the deal: the Chargers, while their record is bad, when you look at the games they've lost, there was only one team they lost to, significantly, and that was the Chiefs. Every other game was a 1-score game the Chargers lost. And, they charged it away, right? Like we watched in Denver and stuff like that. They did stupid things to lose it, as the Chargers always do. But this isn't a bad football team, the Chargers. And so any Raiders fan who's thinking, we're okay, we'll get it figured out. Carr's coming back. Downings will be all right. Like, you need to touch reality here. Again, the NFL, anybody can win on any given day, and typically what puts teams over another team is scheme and passion and drive. And right now, all 3 of those things are lacking on the Raiders. And Murph, do you think for a second the Chargers aren't aware of that? Don't you think that the coaches and the players are licking their chops to come into Oakland? Especially after what we did to them last year in their stadium, how we took it over. You don't think, as a Chargers fan, the 5 of them that exist in the world now, that they want to come into Oakland and just make us cry? Because that's what would happen, man. Imagine watching the Chargers beat the Raiders. Imagine how you're going to feel then, right? Redskins, understandable. Broncos, tough defense on the road. Ravens, what the hell's going on with this team? And then we lose to the Chargers? Dude, good night. Good night. This is a Week 6 must-win game for the Raiders. And because of that, I truly believe this team knows that, and someone is going to be pissed. Someone knows they might lose their job for it. They know it's a must-win game. So the Raiders are going to beat the Chargers. They're going to right the ship. And, we'll be 3-3, which is a whole lot better than 2-4 and the bottom of the division. So, again, I got to thank Murph. The Raiders win because they know it's a must-win game.
Hey, Raiders fans, check this out. Raiders Fan Radio has got an app. I don't know what that means, but you do, because you're listening to this on a computer or something like that. Anyway, go to the Apple Store. Apple Store?
Apple Play Store?
Apple,
No, Google Play.
Apple
has an App Store.
App Store. You can get it at the Apple Store or the App Store or whatever that is. You can, if you got an Android, isn't that like a robot? You can go to Google Play Store. They got show links, they got downloads, they got all kinds of really cool stuff. Hey, if you can't figure it out, give it to a teenager. They know how to work these phones better than you do.
All right, every week, Murph, who works a lot of hours in his job, but he spends a lot of time researching information on the internet. As we mentioned earlier, he's kind of like the resident Cliff Clavin, if you will, of Raiders Fan Radio here. And every week he gives us what's called the black hole of the internet, because y'all know what we're talking about, right? At work, bathroom, wherever it is, you search on your mobile device. You're scrolling through something catches your eye, you click on that. Next thing you know, you're reading about Nancy Sinatra from 1967 or something like that, right? And you're like, how the heck did I get here, right? It used to be your thoughts would do that, right? You daydream about something and you go, how did my thought process get over here? Now it's our searching results on Google. Or the even better one, Murph, is when you're on Facebook late at night, and you're scrolling through your feed, and you see a friend who commented on another friend's post that you haven't seen in a while. So you click on their profile, then you click on another friend's profile, and 3 hours later you're crying because your life doesn't look as good as every one of your friends you went to high school. Sorry, get a little too personal. Anyway, so this is called The Black Hole of the Internet, brought to you by Murph, and we just sit back and let Murph do his thing here.
You know, Sonny, it's all started with the number 50. And what is it that you said? We always commemorate a player based on their number as to the show episode. And you mentioned what player, Sonny, at the top of the show?
1, David Dalby.
Dave Dalby, center for the Oakland and Los Angeles Raiders, took over for Jim Otto and won the Super Bowl 3 times. There's not a ton of audio out there on Dave Dalby, but I did find this nice little clip from a 1977 Raider video, of course, voiced by who, Sonny?
I can't even do an imitation of it. John Facenda.
There we go.
Week 13 brought the Minnesota Vikings in a rematch of Super Bowl 11. The monumental Super Bowl where leadership, talent, preparation, and performance fulfilled the Raiders' destiny of being crowned world champions of professional football. But Oakland needed victory now to gain the playoffs. Superb blocking by Dave Dalby, Gene Upshaw, George Beeler, Art Shell, and Henry Lawrence enabled Stabler to find Cliff Branch.
All right, there you go. So nice little clip highlighting the absolute, rock star, all-time. I don't know if they're the all-time greatest or not offensive line. They are in my mind. I don't know as far as numbers go who's the greatest offensive line ever, but when you listen to that right there, Dalby, Bueller, Henry Lawrence, Shell, and Upshaw, like, come on, man. Like, it just doesn't get any better.
That's pretty strong.
It's pretty dang strong, man. No wonder. I love the stories that they tell about Stabler where, like Upshaw would be like, hey, Snake, just move around or something back there, won't you? Because he would just drop back and just like stand there all flat-footed because the protection up front was just so amazing. So anyways, Dave Dalby, sadly, life taken too soon. I believe it was 2002. He died in an automobile accident, and so it was taken from us too early, for sure. But good man, and so we want to celebrate Dave Dalby here with number 50. But that was an easy one, right? That was number 50 was easy. Well, you start with 50, and then what else is 50? And that's when this happens.
Murph's Black Hole of the Internet.
A journey that begins where everything ends.
Sonny, this is episode number 50 for us. This is not an anniversary for us. This is not a 50-year celebration. This is not those types of 50s. So when you look at the 50s of things, other than a player number, well, there's like Raider anniversaries of the 50-year anniversary. There was the flag that Jose Hernandez took into space was a Raiders 50th year anniversary flag. But this is not an anniversary for us. This is the 50th episode. So I tried to think of some things that were also 50th episodes. Well, there's a lot of 50th episodes of things, but they're not Raider related. So what could I find that was Raider related that was 50th of something? So I started looking for things that were produced or created by other Raider fans. What were their 50th things? So I came across a handful of Raider fans that and I know and are the most high profile of Raider fans that are some amazing creators, right? Amazing talents. Not that we're in their league, but we're also creators ourselves, and we created 50 of these podcasts. Well, Sonny, short list. Give me one or two of the most high-profile Raider fans you know.
Well, used to be Tom Hanks, but not anymore. I'd say Ice Cube has to be on that list.
All right, let's go ahead and start there. So Ice Cube in 1992 released an album called The Predator, and the song on that album called Wicked was the 50th song that Ice Cube released in his solo career, and he takes a nice shot at the Buffalo Bills.
'Cause I'm the one with the fat man skills, and I won't choke like the Buffalo Bills. Sitting at the
So if you don't catch it, what he says is, "I won't choke like the Buffalo Bills."
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
awesome,
good,
awesome line. So there we go. So you get the idea, right? So Ice Cube, huge Raider fan, 50th thing he did is on his own. I took his solo career. I didn't count the NWA stuff. His solo career, he released Wicked, which is his 50th song. So now you mentioned Tom Hanks, who is not welcome on the show, but we will discuss his body of work for the purposes of this segment and this segment only. I looked at, if you look at Tom Hanks's total body of work, Sonny, there's way more than 50 of anything, okay? He did all kinds of different TV shows and short films and narrators and all that. But of his 50 major studio releases, of his major studio releases, what do you think was the 50th movie Tom Hanks starred in?
What the heck kind of question is that, man?
It's Sully, that was released in 2016, all about the pilot that crash landed the aircraft on the Hudson River in New York.
This is the captain. Brace for impact.
What?
Over 40 years in the air, but in the end, I'm going to be judged on 208 seconds. I need a count, passengers and crew.
Is anyone still here?
Ooh, Sully. So there we go. So Tom Hanks' 50th movie was Sully. Now, on to Carlos Santana, who I mentioned earlier in the show. Carlos Santana had a huge body of work. He also had a 50th song released, and that was a song called Deeper, Dig Deeper, which is an instrumental song, so I'm just going to play a little clip of his guitar. Cool. Are you dancing, Sonny? Clapping along? Are you shaking your head? Usually you shake your head when it comes to the Murf's Internet Black Hole. Are you shaking your head yet?
I'm just sitting here waiting.
Okay. All right. So the last one of my all-time favorite bands is Metallica. Metallica has a huge body of work. Lead singer James Hetfield, Bay Area guy, huge Raider fan. One of my all-time favorite moments in Raider history was when they played the parking lot before the 2002 AFC Championship against the Titans. We're going to work that into a black hole one of these days, but the fact that that Metallica came and played a full concert in the parking lot before the champion, that's just one of the coolest things ever. So, but anyways, Hetfield, as we know, is a huge Raider fan. So I went to the Metallica catalog and looked at what their 50th song was that they released. So there's a little bit of a loose Raider connection to come back here. Kind of like, with the Ice Cube song, he referenced the Buffalo Bills. Well, in this song, the song is called The House That Jack Built. So at least we have a little bit of a Raider connection there with Jack Del Rio having a hand in building our current Raider football team. The downside of The House That Jack Built is that it is on an album called Load that was released in 1996. Not the best Metallica album in the world. Unfortunately, we didn't get anything off Ride the Lightning or Master of Puppets or anything like that. We got The House That Jack Built off of Load. So there you go. So there's a handful of famous 50s of other Raider fans and their 50th creations, along with ours here of our podcast of our 50th show of Raiders Fan Radio.
Well done, Murf. Well done, as always. Although I got to say, Murf, to me, Metallica stopped being Metallica after the Black Album.
It ended kind of flat, didn't it? I was really excited about the concept, and I was talking to my wife about it, kind of came up with the idea to do this, and Unfortunately, the Ice Cube song, which is great, I can only play like 10 seconds of it because there's more F-bombs in it than, you know what I mean? I can't play that.
There's more F-bombs in the Ice Cube song than a Raiders fan watching the Raiders play the Broncos.
Exactly. Yes, and then when it comes to Tom Hanks, did we get Cast Away or something like that we referenced on the show? No, we ended up with Sully, and I'm like, okay, I haven't even seen Sully. I don't know. Then Santana, again, amazing body of work, and we got some instrumental tune from the 80s. I'm like, okay. And then with the Raiders, or with Metallica, we got The House that Jack Built. So I'm with you. It's kind of flat, but whatever. So do we.
It was good. It was good. I'm always curious where they go. Like, we don't talk about it pre-show. Like, I hear it just the way you guys hear it, the listeners out there and stuff. So I'm always kind of sitting here going, where's he going to go with this and stuff? So good job. Good job on that.
Thank you.
All right. This is going to end what I believe is going to be an over 2-hour episode.
Oh, my gosh.
So God bless you if you tolerate us for over 2 hours this week. And the Raider Retort, which is last Sunday. That'll be again this Sunday following the game, probably about 8:30 p.m. Pacific time, talking about the Raiders' victory over the Chargers. And again, Murph, I just want to say real quick, appreciate everybody for listening to our show. Anybody who's ever downloaded our app or downloaded just an episode or followed us on Twitter or friended us on Facebook or Instagram as well. Really appreciate it. We love the connection. We love hearing from people. We love the interaction. That's what it's about for me and Murph. We've always talked about the Raiders, but it's a lot more fun in this context of recording the podcast, getting the feedback, putting out a show, hearing feedback about it, interacting on social media and stuff like that. It just kind of helps a connection, especially if you're living outside of the Bay Area, to Dakota Raider and stuff like that, and I think it was Ron in Alliance, Ohio. It's just so cool to be able to come together and talk about the Raiders and share what we all are passionate about, which is the Raiders and stuff like that. So obviously, hopefully you got more important these are your life, faith, family, and then football. But it's cool. So it's been a blessing to us. We appreciate it. Really from our hearts to you guys. We really appreciate everybody checking it out. Our show and just all that stuff for the last year. It's been a lot of fun, Murph.
Absolutely. Well put. There's nothing I could say to build on that. Well done.
All right. And so hopefully next week's episode will be the Bruce Irvin episode because it'll be 51. And hopefully he does something good this game against the Chargers to earn it. That'd be kind of cool, huh, Murph?
Yeah, that'd be nice to celebrate it that way. Absolutely. Come on, Bruce.
Yeah. Come on, Bruce. All right. Hopefully next time you hear us, we'll be talking about the Raiders being 3-3 on the year after we beat the Chargers 84-0. And until that happens, it is Raider Nation, wherever, forever.
Apparently those nuggets I called you with weren't gold. They were nuggets of something else.